Louise, I'm really interested to hear you talk about what what brought you to coaching and what's made this a passion for you.
Yeah, so I started my career in FMCG and did the whole graduate scheme, and got into more junior management roles, and then moved into consulting. And so I was
Mm.
doing cultural change consulting, working with large companies to shift their culture. And part of that included coaching. And I was lucky to work with the guy who owned the company was an incredible coach. And he used to do this just coaching on the fly with me. If we ever had a conference or something, he'd take me to one side and ask me about what was going on. And he would ask just one question or give me one piece of feedback that somehow just struck me. And just the shifts that I used to have from those conversations were amazing. And I thought, I want to do that. So I put my hand up to be accredited as a coach with them. And that's where I started really as part of my formal role. And then I've had other periods of having my own business and working with companies like Thrive as well. Yeah.
What is it that's captivating about coaching?
So I think it's just such a different kind of conversation than we normally have, to have someone there who's holding a space for you, listening without an agenda, not thinking about what they're going to say next, or at least that's what we're trained to do as coaches. And I think it's so rare. Even when you speak to a friend, they want to sort of say, "Oh yes, poor you," and keep you stuck in the problem sometimes to help you feel better. So this is to have someone who's just gently helping you to, hearing you, empathizing with you, but also guiding you towards finding a solution. So yeah, it does feel like a bit of a different conversation, but at the same time, it also feels really safe.
Mm.
So.
Can you share an example of how coaching has helped, say, one specific individual?
Yeah, I was thinking just a recent example, actually, someone who came to me who was so ambitious. I mean, she really wanted to step up in her career, but she was finding that when she was given stretch projects or opportunities to step up and demonstrate what she could do, she would just get paralyzed. There was something in her that was just so afraid, or it just felt too much. And so, I mean, I'll always only go into beliefs or mindset if I have permission to do so. But she said, I really want to have a look at this imposter syndrome, help me. So yeah, she's just started to practice a very simple technique around challenging, when she had those negative thoughts come up, just saying, is this really true?
Mm.
And being able to actually get some separation from what was going on in her head. And it's just great to come in the next session and just hear her say that she'd been putting that into practice and what a difference it had made for her in terms of her energy, her ability to take action. And she'd actually initiated a conversation with her skip level manager and got some feedback, and then got feedback from her manager just about how she'd showed up, in a really, positive, more senior presence than she'd had previously. So it is amazing, just these simple shifts that can make such a big difference.
It's very rewarding, isn't it? And it's quite surprising how a very compressed conversation can achieve such great insight.
Mm.
What do you put that down to? Because for some people, the idea of coming for coaching is terrifying. You know, sitting one for one, eyeballing one another, no space to wriggle. You know, you're there, aren't you?
Mm.
What is it that you think is the thing that makes the profound difference?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's really important for a coach to meet the coachee where they're at.
Mm,
So as I said, if that person hadn't given me permission, I wouldn't have gone there automatically. Sometimes coaching is very pragmatic. But I think it's just essentially you begin the conversation with a contract about what they want to get from it.
mm,
And, ultimately, I will always check in throughout the session around how are we tracking against what you said you wanted to get out of, in the session, or, we could either go here or we could go there, and just getting that steer from people. Because I think, yeah, there's no point. You've got to be in tune with what your client is like. Some people don't want to talk about feelings, and that's absolutely fine. You know, we can talk about, well, what do you think about that, or what do you like to do about that? So it's definitely not about having one formula that you use with everyone. You just like in leadership, you know, you need to adapt your style to work with different people, and
Mm.
you know, be in tune with you know, that well, I think actually explicitly get permission, but also just sense, you know, where to go with someone and what they're up for. Yeah.
People, as my experience of when I've been coached is you're almost blind to the traps that you keep on falling into, or to the rules that you've got in your head about what you say, about what you can or what you can't do. I remember I was working with somebody as a coach, and very, very capable woman, leading a wonderful project with small children and trying to juggle it all. And she had a rule in her head where she said, "Well, of course I can't take the bigger job. You know, I'm oh, it's not for somebody like me that's got young children." And the only thing that I said to her was, "Who says you can't?"
Yeah.
And it's those moments where she said, "Well, let me just think about that." And what the unpacking was, she said, "Well, actually, I don't think this. It's what my mother said to me." And I think that actually, if I was to plan, I could get my head around how I could take this job on. And she went on to be a really senior vice president from being a
Mm,
marketing manager, leading an incredible campaign. But it's just a rule, isn't it? It's something that you're living with, that
yeah.
you're kind of wedded to, and you don't know you're wedded to it. Or it can be a tool or a technique, or my back's against the wall. I've never done this before, and I need some help to be able to navigate it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
different things with different people.
Yeah. And you just, I think outside of a conversation, coaching conversation, you just don't have the time or the reason to really stop and question those kind of things.
Mm.
So, yeah, I always like to think about the analogy of the balcony and the dance floor. So,
Mm.
you know, the dance floor is when we're in the operational, the day to day, and, you know, everything that we have to do, people to talk to. And it's actually taking that time out to step up on the balcony and look down at what's happening on the dance floor. And that really is the invitation of coaching, you know, even if it's just for half an hour, to have that time with your coach to reflect. Because, you know, I mean, reflection is a great tool that I encourage in coaching, but sometimes you just don't have the headspace for it. And, you know, coaching, having that accountability, that meeting that you're turning up to, you know, with that purpose to stop and look at what's happening in your role, where you want to go, what's getting in the way, and how you can, you know, close the gap between where you are now and where you want to be. Um,
Mm.
and, you know, and some of the underlying drivers. I mean, there's a reason why we haven't done it already, or we keep facing the same issue, usually.
What if I've not been coached before and I'm coming to coaching for a first time, and this is my first session with you? You've mentioned something around creating a contract, and but if I just don't know what on earth I can use this thing for, I would imagine it's quite terrifying for people to be able to come and turn up and say, "Hey, I'm here," because all of us want to show up in a good way. So how do you do a first session for somebody who really doesn't know what to use coaching for?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And yeah, sometimes people do really struggle to think, what do I want to focus on in my coaching? So, I mean, I always think no gap, no coaching. That was actually one thing that the coach that I work for had said to me. You know, ultimately, what's a gap? It can either be a gap in terms of, okay, it's a problem. You know, I want it to be like this, or I want to be going here in my career, and I'm getting the feedback that I'm not there yet. So there's like, what's that feedback that I'm getting, that things that I need to work on, or ways I need to show up differently. But it can also be about, you know, an aspiration. So what I'm doing now is working where I am now. So, but if I want to get to the next level, then I need to, you know, shift something different. So, but I would also look at, you know, what are the things that are just frustrating me? You know, what are the things that are draining my energy, that if I could just spend half an hour addressing that, or at least having a plan,
Mm.
that, you know, could help me feel so much more energized. And yeah, as I mentioned about the kind of repeated things as well, sometimes it's just like, oh, every time I present, people just don't, it's not landing. So let's just take some time. Then I fix that for this meeting that I've got tomorrow. But
Mm.
actually, that coaching continues to help me because I'm applying what I learned, for all the meetings I have.
So typically the way that you would start with a client is ask them to bring something that's either pressing or weighing them down or that they're excited about. Just start talking about that.
Yeah.
And then out of that, establish, well, what would be something that would make a positive impact for you? And then out of that, you would do a number of sessions with them, Louise.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that's it. So if it is completely open, it will just be an exploratory session, which is also a great opportunity just to get to know each other as well, check the chemistry and so on. And I'll usually take, lots of different threads in what they've said, and
Mm.
we'll bring it together. Sometimes as, a unifying theme or a way of, breaking it down into, what are the 3 or 4 things that we could focus on over, 3 to 6 sessions,
Mm.
depending on, if it's something just small and immediate, then, might be on the lower end of number of sessions. But if they're looking to, get a promotion or something that's going to require, significant work on, leading self, leading others, and managing up, then we'd want to have more sessions to be able to go through that
Amazing.
journey. So, yeah, so I tend to make a recommendation based on what they say.
You were to think about the kind of the last 12 months, what would you say are the top themes that people have come for coaching on? You've hinted at some of them there around presenting and career progression and confidence, but what would be say the top 4 or 5 things that people have come to you for coaching on?
Yeah, so I think I would say I mentioned I think the imposter syndrome one is it's just amazing. I'm always blown away by people who are high achieving, in senior roles, amazing people, just how common that sense is of, I don't belong here, or what if everyone finds out, I'm not all that I'm, called out to be. So I think that, and just generally boosting confidence, self-belief. I know that's one of the Thrive. That is a big one. But also, I think at the moment, with all of the redundancies, restructuring, some people are getting put in roles that maybe aren't the role they would have chosen for themselves, but that's just how the structure is has put them into that place. So I think there's a piece around like getting control back, getting sort of that sense of, okay, well, this isn't my ideal role, but where do I want to get to next? And how do I, how can I craft my role and, show up in the way, build a personal brand that's going to help me to, have networks and people know what I'm good at, and, getting opportunities to move towards the role that I do want. So I'd say that would definitely be one. And another one, I mean, I love working with leadership transitions. So whether it's, someone transitioning from individual contributor to frontline leader, or from, middle manager into more senior strategic role. And I would say I get a lot of that. I mean, maybe it's because of it being a strength for me, and I've worked on a lot of leadership and talent programs for that. But yeah, I think that piece about, I love Marshall Goldsmith says, "What got you here won't get you there," and I think it's so true. People think that I just got to do what's made me successful until now, but maybe just work a bit harder.
Mm.
And it's no, actually, there are things that you need to stop doing and let go of,
Mm.
and, capability that you need to build in your team so that you can actually do the more, whether it's strategic or, more of the managerial versus doing the doing. So that delegation piece, know how to actually do that effectively, when to do it, when not to do it, because there are just, I think it just ties in with so many things in terms of, whether you're actually leading at the right level that you need to be in your role. But also there's well-being, there's saying yes to too many things and doing your direct reports jobs is not going to be too good for being able to go home at a decent hour.
I think you've just given our listeners a million reasons to come to be coached because as you're talking through all of those, I guess all of us could, you know, furiously nod our heads and say, yes, we could do with a bit of coaching to help us with one of those areas. So, what type of tools or techniques does a coach have and do you have that helps somebody move from feeling stuck or distressed to feeling, hey, I'm on top of this, I want to ride? What type of things would you do?
Yeah.
You share a
So I
couple.
would say some you would call like core competencies of coaching, which I think any coach that's got, hundreds of hours experience is usually, very masterful at and has been trained at. That's, as we're saying, there's something about listening, helping people to really hear themselves talk out loud. I mean,
Mm,
actually, it's amazing how much actually happens just through that process. And
mm,
actually, sometimes talking less is more.
mm,
And just to ask a short question rather than so I mean those things I think are common across all coaches, being able to listen to what the challenge is, ask questions, get to understand, unpack it,
mm,
think about things in a different way. And then and the important part of not stepping in with, well, here's the truth about what's going on.
mm.
So it's that testing, maybe I think I'm hearing this, you want to test that out with you. So there's that kind of,
Yes,
it's almost like you're sitting alongside each other looking at this problem together. And it's kind of like,
yes.
hey, what do you think about this? And, so there's that exploratory element of coaching. And then I think where you go next really depends on the coach and what what they've been, the training is, what they've been exposed to, uh, and the specialisms. So there are so many different processes that can be used, and I don't want that to sound scary either, going
Mm.
through a process. But
Yeah.
I mean, just simple things where you might get someone to uh, reflect on the story that they're telling themselves about a particular situation. And I mentioned about the kind of is it really true question, but it also could just be, well, if you were to just make a tiny little tweak to that,
Mm,
what could be different? And I actually was had that the other day. I had quite a bad day, and I went through this process, and it was amazing how I just felt so good. I felt
mm.
calm, I felt serene, and I thought,
More in control.
it was a very small little change that I made in how I was seeing the situation, but somehow it just opened up so much. So, I mean, that would just be an example.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yeah.
and then, and I think for me, there's some purist coaching, which is all about, just it's got to come from the other person. They've got to come up with all their own solutions. And I do like with Thrive, there's an element of, well, actually, if someone's really stuck and they've never done this before and they have no idea and they've tapped into all their resources and they're not finding anything, well, how about this model? Or what, here's something, what could we experiment with? Or sometimes it's even, well, who does this really good in your organization, or who really
Mm,
well, I should say.
mm.
And then, well, what do they do? So you sometimes got to kind of bring something from the outside because actually I'm stuck,
Yeah,
So
and some of that might be strategies that we've seen other clients use. It may be some of the
yeah,
skills that we have from our own professional background in business. But
yeah,
equally, I know that tools like chunking, where you say, let's take this problem, let's break it down into all of its component parts, let's put them in order, and let's see which one needs fixing first.
yeah,
That's an incredibly helpful thing for people to be able to understand, well, what's step one, what's step two, where am I going to, what does it look like when I arrive there, where am I now? And it's that practical helping people lay out and put it into something that doesn't feel like a big, ugly weight on their shoulders or an
yeah,
onerous project.
definitely.
Mhm.
And I think even just, when I find people are like feeling quite dissatisfied in their career, even just the process of, well, what would the ideal career look like? What would you be doing every day? What would your colleagues be like? What kind of building would you, whatever it is, I mean, of course, it
Yes,
could be within the same organization as well. But it just, when they have that future vision, even if they're just taking a tiny weeny step towards it, it just gets you out of that being stuck in the moment because you've got something to work towards.
I agree. And there's actually that realization in those types of conversations where you realize that you know more than you thought you knew, or you're doing
Yeah.
better than you thought you were, or you've got more answers than you thought you had. And that's simply because you've just gifted yourself half an hour or an hour of being thoughtful
Yeah.
and hearing the things that are most on your mind and being held to account to find the things that you're great at rather than the things that you're poor at, the things that you are doing or have done rather than the things that you're not doing.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly validating for an individual, certainly
Yeah.
validating for me when I'm coached.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So um, sometimes we're asked a question like, how do I know if coaching is right for me? What would you say to someone who asks you that question?
Yeah. I mean, the simple answer would be, anyone who wants to grow, who wants to get unstuck, and wants to, to be at their best in work and life, which I think probably feels like a very broad group. I mean, maybe if you're someone who absolutely is determined that they want to figure it all out on their own and not get help from anyone,
Mm,
maybe you could say coaching isn't for that person, but then actually that's a really good coaching opportunity because,
mm,
what are they missing out on by, or what's the impact on them of having that mindset? Actually, if they reached out to colleagues, they probably get better results and feel better in themselves. So yeah, I have to say I personally think it's quite a broad group.
mm.
But of course, I think I would encourage people just to give it a try, at least to have an initial conversation to see to try it on, see how it fits.
Yeah, and think about the number of people that we've coached, Louise, in our lifetime of being a coach, where they've come and kind of gone, I don't really know if this is for me. And they have the first session and they leave going, why the hell didn't I do this 10 years ago or 20 years ago? Because they've just had
Exactly.
half an hour of absolute luxury and of absolute insight. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I guess when I'm asked it is ev most things in life are worth trying once
Yeah.
for you
Yeah.
before you make an assessment. That's certainly a rule that my dad brought me up to believe in. And you've nothing to lose by giving half an hour to a great conversation. Because
Yeah.
if nothing else, you'll at least see and experience something that's different to your regular day-to-day habitual conversations that you have in other parts of your life. Because
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
coach is going to be your cheerleader, they're going to be someone that will help you get clear and someone that will want the best for you. And that's our major intentions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Um, what keeps you motivated in your work?
So I have to say, I just absolutely love that feeling of someone having that light bulb moment, where you see it's like they often sort of will just look up and there'll just be this like openness that comes into their face. Like I just love to witness that. I feel like it's such a privilege.
Mm.
So yeah, so being able to help others really, I mean, it sounds like pretty basic, but I think and I think, I mean, it's obviously amazing if you can help someone, get that promotion or improve their relationship with their boss or things that are happening day to day at work. But when
Mm.
someone says to me, "Oh, actually, I tried this out with my kids, and we had the most amazing conversation because I was really listening to them." I mean,
Mm.
when you sort of see it actually having ripple effects in other parts of people's lives as well, that can be that's really powerful. I love that. Yeah.
What's the most rewarding feedback you've ever had from one of your clients?
Oh gosh, well, I mean, that would be one of them.
Yeah.
Like, oh, my,
Mm.
my wife is so glad now that I'm at home and spending more time with the family. I mean, that just kind of gets the heartstrings.
It does. It does. I once got a present from a partner of somebody that I coached, and they came into the session with a gift. And I said, "What's this for?" They said, "Oh, it's from my partner. They're so grateful for the work that you've done." And it's, there's a bit of humor in that, isn't there? But it is that moment of actually somebody's made enough of a shift to give up on something that they've maybe always believed in or always done, and it's had that ripple effect.
Yeah. Yeah. I once coached someone, it was on a formal leadership program in an insurance company. And then he brought me in to coach his direct report,
Yes.
who was, it's probably similar, like not really showing up that senior in meetings and holding back. And so, we did some work together and she had like an amazing epiphany and like ended up, I still see sometimes like on LinkedIn, she's doing amazingly.
Yeah.
And then he actually asked me to come and coach his wife. So I did some coaching with her as well. And so, yeah, so I think it is amazing when I mean, to be referred, I think is always
Yeah,
a great, a great honor.
it's a great accolade, isn't it, for the
Yeah.
quality and the impact that you've had on them.
Yeah.
And you mentioned right at the start of this podcast video about you'd had a manager who was an incredibly inspiring coach for you. Whether it's that person or someone else, can you share one piece of feedback or a line or a motto or something that they said to you that's almost been a rule that stayed with you, like in everything that you've done? Um, I had a leader that I worked for, and his one line that said to me is, he said, Pam, he said, you know that if I haven't got a tight red fence rail wrapped around you, you know that that's me giving you permission to just get on and do the job. So get on and go and do the job. Don't wait. Don't invite me to keep the fence rails in really tight to you. And that kind of made me think, actually, people are going to come to me and tell me if actually I'm getting too big for my boots, or pushing too hard or being too ambitious. It was a really useful piece of feedback that that person gave to me. Have you had a really helpful rule that's guided you through your own decisions in your life?
Yes. Well, I did have a piece of feedback. I went through a period, returning to work after maternity leave, and just a few other setbacks that had happened where my confidence got knocked. And I remember getting the feedback that I just it just felt like I was almost apologizing or just being hesitant in how I
Mm,
was showing up.
mm,
And so this manager I had at the time said to me, I just when you're communicating, I just remember like how much you have to offer. And like that's your gift to the people that you're talking with.
mm,
And to just to have that sense of, this is the most important thing that you're going to hear today. I'm
mm,
feeling like, oh, I need to have that energy now more.
mm, mm,
But it's just because I think so often, and sometimes this can be a gender thing as well. And, it's just that sort of like that holding back and not fully owning the space,
mm.
and just to kind of, it's like if I deny others that contribution, I'm not doing myself or them any favors.
Yeah.
So, just that invitation to show up fully, like, let's do this,
Yeah,
this.
and I suppose that's, if we were to conclude about what great coaching is, you've got the incredible results that you can get from working with a professional coach, but you've also got those coaching moments where you can show up and be a coach to one another
Yeah,
and share a thought, a piece of feedback, a moment of gratitude, what you notice in that person. That in itself can be a profound coaching moment, as we've just both shared,
yeah,
as well as taking a bit of time, as you said you'd done, where something wasn't quite going to plan earlier in the week, and you just sat back and did a small shift to actually, what am I saying here about this? And it
mm,
enabled you. So it's multi-level. There's multiple opportunities. You can coach yourself. You can invite people that you work with to coach you. You can give coaching to your colleagues or even to your boss,
yeah,
as well as work with a professional coach. But it's that curiosity and that appetite for thinking, actually, I want something and I'm going to go and get it. I think
yeah,
is the headline that has come through very strongly from our conversation today. And I'm very
yeah.
grateful for you sharing your experience. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks so much for asking me on.